Dear participants, welcome to CSRD Academy. We are incredibly delighted to welcome you to our webinar where we'll talk about CSRD and how to create impact with the help of CSRD. My name is Julia Demyanchenko. I'm a team lead of education and knowledge at Impact Institute and CSRD Academy. And together with two colleagues of mine, with Michel Scholte, who you probably might know, he is the director and the co-founder of Impact Institute, and with another colleague of mine, with Reinier de Adelhout-Turup, the research principal, we will help you to deep dive into the impact that can be created with the help of CSRD. Today, we will have some general housekeeping rules. The first thing that I would like to highlight is the duration. The duration of this session is 45 minutes, and then we'll have 15-minute Q&A session. Please share your questions in the Q&A panel, and we'll come back to them at the end of this webinar. Please note that this session is being recorded, and then we will be happy to share it after it is over. We wish you good luck, and now it's time to have a look at the agenda. First of all, we'll have a look at the Impact Institute and CSRD Academy. Then we will go to the CSRD in a high-pressure cooker and the newest developments in the field. After that, we'll go to how to start a CSRD project. And finally, we'll talk about how CSRD Academy can help you in your CSRD journey. At the end, we'll have a Q&A session and closing. In a couple of seconds, you will see my colleagues, and they will share with you the recent updates and also how you can make impact with the help of CSRD.
My name is Michel Scholte, and I'm the director and co-founder of Impact Institute and TruePrice. And I'm excited to sit in front of you today to talk about the CSRD Academy. Next to me is Reinier de Adelhout-Turup. He is our head of research, and he also holds a PhD in particle acceleration or physics. And what I find striking is that he's not just expert in accelerating particles, but also in accelerating business through the language of impact. Tell us more about yourself, Reinier.
I've been working here at Impact Institute for 8 years. I'm happy to share all my secrets with you. And of course, also read more on me, for instance, through the impact-weighted accounts framework that we've developed to accelerate the transition to a sustainable economy.
Okay, let me just walk you through the theory of change that we want to pursue through Impact Institute and the CSRD Academy. Like in the slides in front of you, you can see that on the left, there is the current day economy that pursues financial value. It's shareholder driven, and that's the goal of business. And basically, they take social, human, and natural value and turn it into financial values. In a way, they extract existing stocks of value. And the ways in which companies do that is through the information brought through prices, through profits, and through returns. We want to accelerate towards an impact economy, where the goal is not just financial value, but also true value, contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals, alleviating poverty, fighting hunger, addressing the climatological and biodiversity crisis. And what is needed for that is that business models are not just extracting value, but also create value, or instead of extracting value, creating value. It's more regenerative business models. They take social, human, and natural capital, and they turn it into more social, human, natural capital by using financial capital. So finance as a means to impact instead of creating finance by extracting social, environmental, and human value. The information systems are prices, true prices, profits, true profits, and true returns. The same type of information, but extended with more societal relevant info. What is the effect of business decisions on stakeholders? What is the remediation cost? What is the restoration, compensation, and prevention cost? But also what's the positive impact? And then because we've been working on this for over a decade, we've been specializing into this, and we see the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and the European Sustainability Reporting Standard as a perfect opportunity to bring impact into the boardroom, to ask companies to define metrics, set targets, to make strategies, to design a governance, and to really drive policies for a more sustainable economy. So that's why we are so excited about CSRD, and that's why we believe you can actually use CSRD to maximize your impact. And that's obviously why we started the CSRD Academy, because we believe that it's all about educating yourself and others and creating impact literacy so that you really master the language that's needed to address the crisis and create positive impact. An example of what we've done in the past is the impact profit and loss for ABN AMRO, one of the largest banks in the Netherlands. As you can see in front of you on the left and the right, different sectors that the portfolio of ABN AMRO contains of, and you can see the different natural capital impacts. And what is nice is that you can, through the quantification and that language, you can actually compare different impacts, and you can express it in a monetary unit that makes it very decision relevant, and you can actually see what's the cost and how can we improve that cost. And in the slide that you see in front of you now is how the negative effects on biodiversity in 2020 were improved in 2021. And you can see that there's a 70 million equivalent value in euros to nature improved.
And one of the exercises that we have in the courses that we offer through CSRD, we ask our clients how they can explain this value creation or this strong reduction in value reduction, how they can explain it through the lens of sustainability, and to what degree then ABN AMRO, having done this work, would or would not be ready for CSRD.
And if we look at the type of expertise that we bring to the table, we have both people who have expertise in the different impact fields, really fundamental knowledge as well, people with a strong financial background. Reinier, for example, worked more than 5 years at Roland Berger Strategy Consulting as a strategy analyst, but also we have a variety of other backgrounds, people with a more climate background, with a more sociological or human rights background. So we have a variety of people that bring in the right expertise for the business side, for the impact side. Joran Prince, our head of education, who is a registered accountant. What is unique about what we offer is that we also have educational experts, instructional designers, people who really know how to effectively create assignments, workbooks, instructions to make sure that this information not just stays in a PDF, but lands into the minds and hearts of people. So it's really exciting to present to you this webinar and to talk more about CSRD Academy. A brief background on the timeline of the evolution of our work. So we started with the integrated profit and loss account for AkzoNobel, a large chemical company in the Netherlands, and that evolved into impact-weighted accounting that we brought out together with Harvard Business School in a publication, and that led the foundation for impact accounting globally. We applied it with ABN AMRO. We work with the audit firms for assuring these types of reports. I think 2021, actually, the first true profit and loss was assured as part of the integrated annual report of ABN AMRO. And when the CSRD was adopted, end of last year, we opened the CSRD Academy to really bring impact into the boardrooms and use this momentum to really get the transformation on impact that we all want. So this is some background on what we have done in the past. I'm thrilled to give the floor to Reinier for a CSRD pressure cooker. So he will tell you all about what the CSRD is about. And yeah, exciting to hear more, Reinier.
Yeah, thanks, Michel. Maybe the shortest summary is that CSRD is, of course, all about sustainability reporting, but it's not just sustainability reporting. It's sustainability reporting in a very focused way. So on the left over here, the old world. It's primarily voluntarily. It's your own choice of topic, so you can greenwash, cherry pick, and numbers are often difficult to report because even if multiple companies are reporting on the same topic, they can choose slightly different definitions, so it is very hard to acknowledge which one is the more sustainable and which one is the less sustainable. No longer so under CSRD. On the right, you say reporting sustainability for in large companies, no longer a voluntary element. It's on 10 selected topics, which we believe are indeed like 10 of the most important topics when we talk sustainability. And it's using very precise, same indicators for all, so there's no way to hide behind unobvious definitions. Also, your journey, your CSRD journey, is guided by these ESRS documents, and there's a total of 12 of them. There's one that gives general requirements, there's one that gives general disclosures, and then there's 10 that give specific topics. And throughout our courses in the CSRD Academy, we zoom in quite deeply into each of those documents. What does it mean to you, and what does it mean to your organization? So here you see what are those 10 topics, those 10 environmental, social, and governance topics. 5 environmental ones on climate, on pollution, on water, on biodiversity, and on the circular economy. 4 social ones that we think are really quite revolutionary, that they are all included. On your own workforce, on the work in your value chain, on affected communities, and on consumers and end users. And lastly, 1 governance topic about business conduct. And then what does CSRD require to report and brace for impact? It's over 1,000 data points, 1,144 data points on policies, on targets, and on metrics. And you need to report those all in a standardized way, and it's also in your report, but it's also in a digital format that enables one-on-one comparison. So you can literally go into a database and say, this bank versus that bank, who has the better performance on climate, if I care about that. Our course learners are often, let's say, a bit shocked when they learn the number 1,144. And they ask us, do we need to collect all those data points? And we can typically comfort them a bit. We say, no, you only need to report the important data points. And a more CSRD word for importance is material. So data points are only in scope if they are material, if they possibly change the decisions that you can take as a consumer, as an investor, as an employee, whether you believe the stories of those companies. And of course, during our course, we give quite a bit of attention to this materiality assessment, because we think this is one of the most important steps where you really lay the groundwork of your CSRD journey.
And just one thing to highlight here is that the definition of materiality is not just the investor that may or may not adjust its decision, but it's also other stakeholders. That is the revolution that CSRD brings to the table. If you look at the ISSB standards that have been recently introduced, this is still about the shareholder relevance.
It's the old world.
It's the old, even though it is called sustainability, even though it's pretending to zoom into climate, it's again about whether there's a risk that may affect the value of the business and therefore affects the shareholder, instead of whether it is affecting others beyond that stakeholder group. So that's really the revolution of it.
That's really what I think is so interesting about CSRD. Another question we frequently hear from our learners is, when does my CSRD journey start? Obviously it starts today, but when do I need to report for the first time? And we made this overview. And the answer is basically, it depends a bit on your company. It depends on the size of your company, and it depends on whether you were already included in the current big disclosure requirements, which is called NFRD, which stands for Non-Financial Reporting Directive. If you are already part of that, you need to report in 2025 over the book year 2024, which means that really you only have a couple of months to get ready, to get all your systems ready, that you start collecting the right data. If you're other large company, as shown on the screen, following 2 out of 3 criteria on your number of employees, on your number of assets, and your amount of revenue, if you meet 2 out of those 3, you have 1 year respite, but you already need to start pretty quickly in 2026 over the book year 2025. listed SMEs, or I should rather say the MEs. It's really about medium-sized enterprises, not about small ones. They start in 2027, over the book year 2026. And what is very interesting also about CSRD is that non-EU companies that have substantial operations here in the EU, they also fall under CSRD. So there's no hiding, yeah, I'm not really a European company, therefore I can let all the European companies become sustainable. No, there's no hiding. If you're big in Europe, you're reporting under CSRD.
So it's a level playing field for sustainability.
Yeah, and I like that. And then again, a question that our learners ask, wow, that's soon, that's big. Do I need to have everything ready on day one? And again, we can typically comfort them a bit. There is some phasing in arrangement, and some of those are actually pretty recently announced. It's in the June update of the Commission. And there's a quite technical slide over here that says only when you reach the purple, it's full-on everything reporting. And typically in the first 3 years, it's somewhat easier for you. So for instance, in the first 3 years, when you can show that the right type of data is not available, you can use proxy data, provided that you also show what you did to get the best data and what you will do to have it in the future. But in the first 3 years, typically you can use proxy data, and that's okay. What we also see is that for some organizations, it's made slightly easier, specifically for the somewhat smaller organizations, those that have less than 750 employees. For instance, those are allowed in the first 2 years to not report on some specific topics, such as biodiversity and works in the value chain. Those are important. They will eventually be in scope, but only in year 3 for all those organizations. Now then we come to, and I would say literally the €1 million question. Why? Why do Misha and I that care about impact and that care about the inherent sustainability of companies, why do we focus so much on CSRD? That at the end of the day is a reporting directive. And I looked a bit around and I found this picture. Everyone is looking at you. If you are a big organization, everyone is looking at you, and everyone will want to know, what is your reporting strategy? What is your sustainability strategy? What are your promises? And what are your actual emissions and your actual actions in your value chain? And interestingly enough, like many of the 1144 data points are about your ambitions. So you need to have a transition plan. You need to have policies. You need to mention your action and resources for getting to a more sustainable company, and you need to show your targets. And let's be very clear. If you have no ambitious targets, or if you have targets that are like very non-ambitious, most likely you will not get a fine for not complying to CSRD, but you will be noticed. You will be on the beach and people will tell you, yeah, all your competitors do have a plan. All of your competitors are improving, but you're not. And we believe in this positive force of peer pressure. So we believe that once CSRD is there, companies are really pushed to improve themselves and really pushed to become the more sustainable version of themselves. And that's why Misha and I, that in the end care about sustainability and not about reporting, we do care about CSRD.
And then what is a nice metaphor is a carrot to hit with. It's a carrot and a stick together. It's a sticky carrot, right? That is what it is. And we believe it has a huge potential for driving more impact.
Maybe a brief, more somewhat technical interlude. So I mentioned briefly that there is updates of the Commission. So what's in it? Let's have a look at the most important changes. First, there is additional phase-in requirements, and I showed you the colorful graph. It used to be that some phase-in requirements were already mentioned, but they made it very specific. They don't want companies to be not ready. They want companies to be ready, and they're giving you 3 years to really be your full outfit. Secondly, and that's basically the second and the third point here, fewer topics are always mandatory, and more topics are mandatory upon materiality. So climate change in your own workforce, to be fair, I can imagine very few companies for which this would not be material. But in any case, you do your materiality assessment, you probably find their material, and then you report on it. But if you happen to find they're not material to you, don't bother about them as you wouldn't for the other topics. Something that I find a bit of a step back, but hey, it's a big step forward as a whole anyways, is that in the current plan, there's no obligation for things that you found to be non-material. There's no obligation to tell all your stakeholders why they are non-material. You would still need to convince your accountant, because CSRD reports go through an accountant, and only when the accountant says it's good enough, you can publish it. But you're no longer obliged to tell all your stakeholders, we excluded this for these reasons. You can just say, we excluded this because we found it non-material.
Let me tell more about the actual project management of a CSRD project, because it does boil down to the banal day-to-day activities to bring this into practice in the organization. This is a very important part, and I know I'm spoiling a lot of juice when I talk about the costs involved. There's a cost-benefit analysis, and here you see that for the NFRD companies, there is a total of approximately 600,000 euros of expenditures, both one-off expenditures as well as recurring expenditures.
So this is what you'll spend in year one, basically, and then in year two, you're still going to spend the recurring ones.
So that is significant, and that will be for years and years ahead. And then you can imagine this to be people additional to the current reporting teams, sustainability experts, but also buying data, proxy data, for example, if there's missing data on carbon impacts in scope 3, for example, among suppliers. For the non-NFRD companies, those companies that are now part of the CSRD, so we had in the NFRD situation approximately 10,000 companies, and until the end of 2030 it will be up to 50,000 companies. So it's a significant additional number of companies, that there's also more than 300,000 euros expected in expenditures. Let me say this, we hear from and we know from our clients that this is a fierce underestimation. Some large corporations have added 20 FTE additional to their current reporting teams on this subject to make sure that they comply. 20 more people. The leaders in the field that we know of have to maybe do 50% more compared to what they did under the NFRD with their GRI reports and all the additional disclosures that they provided. So it's a real challenge, and expect a lot of additional work.
And the examples you gave are actually for companies that are relatively ready, because those are companies that are already reporting under GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. Even those, on top of that, they need to hire all those FTEs that you mentioned. So yeah, it's a substantial piece of work, but we think it can be done.
Absolutely.
Right logic.
And then if you look into the table and break down what the resources entail, you see that most of the expected kind of costs are anticipated on climate change. E1, that is one of the standards, let's say 27.5% or so, according to the researchers. And there's approximately 11% for biodiversity and approximately 10% on workers in the value chain. So that is quite important to also have this type of expertise in-house.
And maybe to tell you why we highlighted these two topics, those are topics that we explain in a lot more depth during our courses at the CSRD Academy. Those two topics, they are typically underreported as yet, but very important, and they will require substantial resources.
If we then have a look at the timeline and workflow, it's useful to note that there's a time for preparation, dry run, to make sure that companies get used to this, the organizations are set up. There will be a long period of data collection. There's a kind of allowance for phasing in data, starting with proxies and then building up the own databases from the bottom up, and also then the reporting cycles. Recurring projects in line with the financial reporting cycles are expected from 2025 onwards. And this is the NFRD companies. For the non-NFRD large companies, the
basically
timeline
everything is shifted 1 year.
Exactly.
You have a bit more time to prepare, but probably also have a bit more to prepare. So for both of them, the messages start today.
Exactly. And then just a few thoughts on the governance. Important to have a clear governance. We suggest a steering group, a project group and also a working group that is more dedicated to the day-to-day operations. Making sure that there's sufficient mandate also with regard to data collection that can provide urgency and resources, but also making sure that this is embedded in the ExCo. This is really a material board issue, and their buy-in and involvement is key to make this a success. The type of expertise needed really runs through all the dimensions of the ESRS, the European Sustainability Reporting Standard, social, environmental, but also the different finance departments, internal audit, IT expertise, because we need to make it into a machine-readable format. So really it involves multidisciplinary teams. If we look at the work streams, there's typically 8 work streams in the actual project that goes from initiation to gap analysis, materiality assessment, the data collection. Those 3 are key and involve most of the time and more the analytical time, because you need to see what is required for the standard, what are the gaps, and what then is still to be collected. And then you need to actually collect it, and that is something that takes a lot of time. Improving and including control and internal audit is important. Embedding mandate in the organization through policies and governance, and finally reporting and dashboarding. And finally, the external audit part, Joran Prinze, our head of research, always says, involve audit, because otherwise you run into the risk that you have to do it again. And that is super costly. So make sure that internal audit and the external auditors are part of the setup of this project already.
Early as possible. Yeah, and of course, during our CSRD Academy journey, we'll touch on each of those steps in sufficient detail to make you ready when you need to be ready.
So what is the type of learning experience that you can expect when you join the CSRD Academy? We have engaging plenary sessions. We have authentic report-based assignments, the project planning templates, scenario-based learnings, and recently we've also added simulation activities. So this is really intelligently designed by top instructional designers to make sure that this really lands into your organization, that the teams are excited about this, but also really get what it is about and have a kind of practical feel of this, not just reading PDF documents. That's something that everyone can do, but this is really about what is behind the PDF, what's in between the lines, how does it look like in practice, and can we simulate this, can we bring this into the classroom? So that is what you can expect. So if we look at the templates that we provide, that includes the CSRD project management template, the materiality assessment template, and a gap analysis template. This can save you tens of thousands of euros just by joining the course. This can enable you to bring it into practice yourself, to allow your teams to bring this into practice, and to really see how this is from a theoretical concept, a practical concept. You will also receive a manual that includes detailed information and explanations. If you are interested, and I suppose you are, you can book a 20-minute discovery call with one of our experts that can run you through what the platform entails, what's required, what's the timeline, the resources, and also we are more than willing to help you choose the most suitable option based on your preferences. Don't forget to send an email to education@impactinstitute.com to book your run-through today. You can see I'm extremely excited to talk about this, and I'm sure when you have done this, you will be an ambassador for this CSRD experience. Now, let's go to the questions and answers. There were so many people responding to this initial part. Let's look what people have to say.
Let's have a look at the first question. So the first question that we received through the chat function is, will you update us on the August update as well? Brief answer, yes, we will. Next one. We are a small company, but we are a supplier of many other companies. What are the CSRD implications for us?
That is that you are potentially someone that need to provide data to larger companies about the performance of the workforce, the CO2 emissions, all sorts of data that is required to comply with the disclosure requirements. Expect to receive a data request, expect to be involved in an event for suppliers, for clients.
Because one of the very interesting properties of the CSRD is that it doesn't define sustainability as siloed on your own operations. You are as sustainable as your supply chain. So if I am I know my favorite example is always Tony Chocolonely because I like chocolate so much. If I'm a chocolate manufacturer, I can't say in my factory in Belgium or in my factory in Switzerland, there's no child labor. If there's child labor at my suppliers, it really matters what's your supply chain. So the one who asked this question, they are a supplier to other companies, therefore they are in the supply chain of those companies, therefore that company needs to include them in their CSRD journey. Obviously there's a bit of materiality involved again here, so I expect most companies to first talk to their largest suppliers, but even the second tier suppliers, the second largest group of suppliers, might eventually get a call, might eventually get a data request. Stay tuned, I'd say.
And make sure that you know the fundamentals anyway. Where can we find all the ESRS documents? Good question. It's always a hassle to get this and to make sure that you get the most recent drafts. Right now, in fact, the most relevant draft may be the response of the Commission. That is probably, and that is one document that includes all the different publications. But to make it, well, comprehensible, there is in the ESRS kind of part of the EFRAG website an overview of all the PDF documents that Reinier already talked about. You can find them through efrag.org/lab6, and there is currently the most recent publications. And we will do an effort to make sure that our learners are in the loop of the most recent publications. We will also make sure that we have a place where it's more easy accessible.
Cool. Next question, when will the industry standards be announced?
That's, I think, in your ballpark, Reinier.
Yeah. So I'm a bit saddened to give this answer because the answer should have been there already there. The original promise of EFRAG, the working group that prepares all those documents, is that it would come this summer. But then a couple of months ago, they said, well, we're receiving so much questions, and often the very same one that we are now first focusing on a FAQ document, like answering all those frequently asked questions. And they promised the industry standards, or I'd rather say the industry guidance on some of the most common industries. It would be later. I'm expecting it somewhere next year. And if you're in one of those industries that are in scope, it will really make your life a bit easier.
And it's ESRS 3 and also referred to as sector standards.
Yeah.
What about the CSRD obligation if we form a group with multiple companies from different parts of the EU, each less than 250 employees, but with a total well over 750 employees? Then that is actually also considered as a single entity. You follow the structure of your financial report, and therefore it's very likely that this situation will lead to a requirement to disclose.
So probably you are a large company, you're disclosing basically similar to your financial disclosures. You're probably disclosing primarily in one of the EU countries. So the CSRD is a directive from the European Union, which means that they ask all the member states to make it into actual local law. They're currently doing that, but I expect that to all be rather similar. So you will probably pick the country where you are headquartered, where you also focus your financial accounting, and in that country you do your sustainability accounting.
We are all already complying with certain ISO standards as well as the following specialized topical disclosure standards around biodiversity and climate. How new will CSRD be for me? Good question. If you already have reporting or frameworks that you adopt, then obviously you make it more easy. You hit the ground running. So, well, it depends. In the gap analysis phase that we would prescribe or would recommend, there's the moment to see what is actually the things that we are doing, how does it compare to what is required, and what is the gap. It's likely that if you have sustainability related ISO protocols that you have implemented, that, for example, certain governance requirements or certain human rights related processes to assure, listening to potential breaches of human rights amongst suppliers, that those processes assure that you are already in line with kind of a more diligent process to respect human rights. Or when you have biodiversity reporting that is likely to help you with providing the data on biodiversity, I think just do your gap analysis, see what's the gap, and make sure that you comply.
Thanks.
Cool.
I think those were the questions that we received through the platform. Keep sending us questions, keep asking us questions. We'll happily respond to that, maybe in the next webinar, and maybe we'll have you in the classroom, and looking forward to talk to you.